Welcome to The Gathering. Welcome to our podcast on what cavemen knew and what we forgot. In a previous podcast, we mentioned the scientifically proven 4 principles for building a meaningful life: faith, family, friendship, and meaningful work. This formula was created by Arthur Brooks at Harvard, and it largely summarizes the work done by some of the most prominent scholars who have studied the elements necessary for building a life that gives a real sense of satisfaction and meaning. The first of these elements or principles is faith. But in examining faith, we soon see that it is embedded in a number of other issues. When we ask, what is faith, we also end up asking, faith in what? And then there's the unavoidable connection of faith and religion. So let's take a look at each of these. When you ask a secular materialist what faith is, you usually get a pretty standard answer. Faith is the abandonment of reason. Reason is the most important factor that separates mankind from animals. They think of faith as a betrayal of everything that has given us human progress. Faith and its brother, religion, are seen as diseases that have caused more wars and death than any other factors in human history. Well, in part, secular materialists do have a point, though everything else that they say is factually incorrect. Faith is, in fact, at least temporarily, an abandonment of reason and a temporary abandonment of logical thinking. It's temporarily letting go of rationality. But faith is so much more than that. The word faith comes from the Latin fides. Fides was the goddess that embodied trust, confidence, and reliability. In the ancient world, faith was thought of as a reciprocal relationship. You can have faith in someone, and they can have faith in you. You can trust them, and they can trust you. You can rely on them, and faith was seen as a positive good. But today, faith is used in a slightly different way. It involves trusting and reliability, but now it's trusting and relying on the fact that there's a reality outside of the material world that can be perceived by the senses, something above and beyond that transcends the limits of our normal perception and reason, something divine. But does this kind of faith, this trust that there is something transcendent or divine beyond the material world and the limits of reason, make us less human, as the secular materialists claim, because we've let go of reason, or more human? Let's take a closer look at the transcendent. Roughly speaking, transcendence can be defined as having a sense that there is something else, something otherworldly, above and beyond our normal sense perception, that we can only sense vaguely, though we know that it's there. It's what anthropologists describe as a sense of the sacred. We know that it's there, that it's not of this world, and that it defies our intellect and rationality, but we know that it's there. Now, some people may experience this sense of the transcendent in nature. Others may experience it in real love. It often shows up in prayer and meditation. This sense of the transcendent is fundamental to the human experience, and I would venture to say that rather than making us less human, it's the most human of human characteristics. The earliest evidence we have of this sense of the transcendent is found in ancient cave paintings dating back more than 45,000 years ago. One of the earliest depictions is what anthropologists call the Birdman of Lascaux, an abstract figure of a human body with a bird's head. Many anthropologists see this figure and other figures like it found throughout the world as providing evidence of early humans' first experience of the transcendent, something outside of our perception, but nonetheless real. They interpret these figures as our first evidence of an early form of primitive religion, a perception of the divine in an attempt to interpret and represent what it is. It's important to note, though, that anthropologists not only credit these earliest expressions of human communication as primitive expressions of religion, but also the first evidence of human cognition, that most complex operation of the human mind. Think about that. Human cognition. What makes us truly human? And where does it first appear? In the earliest record of religion. One can see from this experience of the transcendent and having faith in it, letting go of reason and trusting that the transcendent is real, rather than making us less human, is what makes us actually fully human. Philosophers and psychologists have wrestled with the idea of the transcendent for literally thousands of years. Plato described it as pre-existing knowledge of something that already resides in us, but is triggered by our consciousness by some event or experience. Carl Jung described it as archetypes, symbols or patterns that we instinctively know as true or real, even though we can't always prove them. Getting back to faith, you can think of faith as letting go of rationality and trusting in our sense of the transcendent. Remember, the word faith comes from the Latin fides, the goddess that embodies trust and good faith or goodwill. In other words, faith, like fides, can be seen in trusting our sense of the transcendent and knowing there is goodness in it, that it is good for us to do so. But faith in what? Now, our Judeo-Christian tradition tells us the answer to that is faith in God, an intelligent, benevolent higher power. But a rational materialist would dismiss such a statement of belief in this benevolent higher power and call us delusional for believing in it. But is it delusional? I think not. I would argue that it's the most rational and logical conclusion we can come to. Let's look at the evidence. At one time, people believed that Darwin's theory of evolution completely destroyed any notion of what has been called intelligent design theory, the notion that creation of all those things in nature, including humans, were created by an intelligence that designed them in a very particular way. But Darwin's theory of evolution, the idea that species changed and new species came to life by random mutations over long periods of time, has been completely undermined by scientific discoveries in the last 50 years, by discoveries like the Cambrian explosion, the Big Bang, and the fine-tuning argument, each of which indicates that there is an intelligent designer behind all of creation. In further podcasts, we'll be investigating these theories, but for now, just keep in mind that humankind has always recognized the transcendent from the time of mankind's first experience of cognition. We've all experienced in one way or another in our lives that sense that there really is something out there, something sublime that we can't capture with our senses, but we know that it's true from our own experience, just as Plato and Jung did. And like the goddess Fides, who gave us faith and trust, we know that we can let go of rationality and rely on our sense of the transcendent, and that it's good for us to do so. As you'll see, there's so much available to you to build the life you want, a life of meaning, satisfaction, and accomplishment, where you can develop relationships that you can rely on. Join us as we go together on the adventure of helping you build the life you want to lead. For The Gathering, I'm Leonardo Radomile. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you heard, give us a quick thumbs up and subscribe. To learn more about The Gathering and our free course, check out our webpage. You'll find the link below.